I would say that this is John Barilaro will run the New South Wales Deputy Premier, and I believe he will win. This is John Barilaro's seat to lose. Notwithstanding the issues that Scott Morrison has had on the South Coast with the bushfires and so forth, Barilaro is a national. He has a massive profile in his state seat of Monaro, which is next to Bega, the state seat where that bushfire disaster occurred. He got 60% of the vote there in the state poll, and as a national, he could effectively run against Morrison in some aspects if he needed to. It is not a coincidence, Tom, that John Barilaro lobbied to become Minister for Bushfire Recovery. Last year, John Barilaro told Gladys Berejiklian he believed Mike Kelly was going to retire and he wanted to run for the seat. So this has been a long time in the planning. It's finally come to fruition. We revealed on Sunday it was definitely going to happen. It would happen this week. And Scott Morrison's quite right. It would be a massive achievement to win, but he's just in the box seat. Even if Barilaro wasn't to run, Andrew Constance, who took him on during the bushfires, would run for the Liberals. The coalition is massively in the box seat here. I've got to say, I think if Jim Molan runs, he's crazy because he's in the Senate. He's got a seat now. If he runs, he won't win. He won't beat Barilaro, so he's better off sitting where he is. I know Morrison said that they wanted a Liberal to run as well. That's a choice. I don't think too many Liberal people will preference Labor, but I just think it would be foolhardy of Jim Molan to take it on. In terms of the timing of the by-election, it'll be at least a month. Sometime between 1 month and 2 months' time is my understanding. That's the plan, Tom.
Jim Molan, I guess if he does run, it'll show just how unsafe he feels in the next split up of Senate positions in New South Wales, remembering he has that sort of Damocles hanging over his head there eternally. What about the process for John Barilaro and whether or not if he runs, does he quit New South Wales Parliament? Does he have that as a fallback option?
No, he's got to quit. He's got to go. It's as simple as that. You can't take the mickey like that. Look, I know there are situations where people leave the upper house and keep the seat open, certainly at the state level. But he'll be going, and I think his position will be between Adam Marshall, Melinda Pavey and Paul Toole, with Marshall the favourite and backed in by Barilaro. But it'll be all or nothing, victory or death here for Barilaro. But he's not going to, for that very reason, he's not going to run unless he knows he's going to win. And we heard him on Sky News. He sounded pretty confident this morning. And the reason for that is 2 nights ago, they did National Party polling, which showed even in a 3-corner, he'd get over the line. So Anthony Albanese isn't dampening expectations here. He's quite right with what he's saying. Labor is the underdog. They might get the Bega Mayor, Kirsty McBain, who got somewhat of a very good profile in the fires to run, and she'll probably give a good account of herself, but she's really behind the 8 ball when it comes to this seat. 1% margin, and without Mike Kelly, they wouldn't have held on to it. They wouldn't have won it in 16 either.
It's fascinating, though, isn't it, when we look at this contest? I mean, if you'd spoken about this a few months ago with the bushfires as the main issue fresh in minds, you'd probably imagine some different odds, Andrew Clennell. I
agree.
The fact that COVID-19 has, swept through, dominated everything, and instead the question becomes, well, who can sort of rebuild the economy best? The coalition feels like it will be on stronger ground.
Look, I think that's right, Tom, and but I think the real thing here is the profile of the candidate the coalition will run. I think if it was just Jim Molan versus Labor here, I don't think the government would win. I think the key here is a personal vote. Anthony Albanese was making the point there that Mike Kelly's personal vote was worth 3 or 4%. I reckon John Barilaro's is probably worth 4%. I reckon Andrew Constance's would be worth 5 to 6. So you have a situation where in a marginal seat where you know it's going to be tight, you have that high-profile candidate. They're the one who makes the difference in this kind of contest, I think.
Yeah, both of them ring true as that sort of authentic candidate. In particular, Andrew Constance, after some of his contributions, of course, during the bushfires, was, very honest, perhaps at some point in time too honest for his own government. Just finally on Mike Kelly as well, Andrew Clennell, he does have genuine affection towards him from both sides. Of course, a long time in public life. He was always very understated around his own health problems as well. When he was unable to do interviews, he was pretty sort of, dismissive, didn't want to talk about himself too much. But clearly he's been going through a pretty tough time.
Well, decent people often leave politics, Tom. That's just the way it goes. It's a rough and tumble environment. Having said that, he did make the point. He was in for some pretty rough and tumble occasions during the army. I mean, he served in Somalia, Bosnia, East Timor and Iraq as a colonel. He was the Minister for Defence Material in 2013, just for a year or so, and a parliamentary secretary prior to that. National Security Advisor to Bill Shorten in opposition before he won his seat back. He's been a key figure. You can tell from Anthony Albanese saying him and Richard Marles will still take his advice. I don't think he was that happy that he didn't get a better front bench position after the election from Albanese, it's got to be said. But yeah, it's a real credit to Mike Kelly in terms of his service and in terms of what you're saying about both sides of Parliament rating him and thinking he's a great guy, basically. But yeah, I mean, we heard about, I thought there were 5 or 6 medical procedures or surgeries. There were 10. And as I understand it, it's related to severe dehydration during his time in the army from his service in Africa. So that must be very hard to contend with. We saw him get emotional about his family there, and let's just wish him all the best, Tom.